The air in the bustling Osaka dojo was thick with anticipation, a palpable hum of excitement and nervous energy. Every seat was filled, every corner packed with eager spectators, and a flurry of flashing cameras from the international press. In the center of the polished wooden floor, a figure of global renown stood, radiating an almost ethereal calm. It was Muhammad Ali, the greatest, his gaze steady, his posture relaxed, yet undeniably ready. Then a formidable shadow fell across the ring. Koji Tanaka, a massive sumo wrestler, lumbered forward. His sheer size was daunting, a mountain of muscle and tradition. His face a canvas of arrogance and raw, unbridled excitement. He ignored the hushed, urgent warnings from his own trainers, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and resignation. Tanaka had a point to prove, a statement to make, and he wouldn't be deterred. With a booming voice that rattled the dojo's rafters, Tanaka unleashed his challenge in broken but perfectly understandable English. "Ali, you are no match for me. I will crush you." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The sheer audacity of the challenge, the disrespect shown to a legend, was almost unthinkable. But Ali, ever the master of composure, did not flinch. A slight, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips, a mere flicker of amusement. He offered a slow, deliberate nod, acknowledging the challenge without engaging in a war of words. He then slowly raised his hands, not in a combative stance, but almost as if extending an invitation. There was a quiet confidence in his movements, an unnerving sense of control that seemed to momentarily deflate Tanaka's bluster. For a split second, the sumo wrestler hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his confident features. But the moment passed. Replaced by renewed fury, Tanaka charged forward, a force of nature intent on overwhelming his opponent. His plan was clear: grab Ali, lift him, and then, well, the rest would be a formality. But Ali, with a lightning-fast movement that defied his size, sidestepped the charging sumo. It wasn't just a step. It was a blur of motion, a dance of evasion. Tanaka, caught completely off balance by his own momentum, stumbled past Ali, his massive frame careening clumsily. A collective murmur rose from the crowd, a mix of surprise and dawning understanding. Sometimes, the biggest mouths learn the hardest lessons. Tanaka spun around, his face a mask of confusion, quickly morphing into furious determination. He charged again, his movements less calculated, more desperate. Ali moved again, a blur of motion, an elusive shadow. What truly happened next? Before we continue this fascinating story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories to life. The year was 1976. Muhammad Ali, no longer just a boxer, but a global phenomenon, had arrived in Japan. He was more than an athlete. He was a cultural icon, celebrated worldwide not only for his unparalleled prowess in the ring, but also for his captivating charisma and outspoken personality. His presence alone was enough to electrify any city, and Osaka, a vibrant, energetic hub of business and entertainment, was no exception. Ali's visit transcended mere sporting interest. It was a cultural event. Japan, a nation steeped in tradition and deeply respectful of its own martial arts, was simultaneously fascinated by the influx of foreign superstars. The contrast between Ali's flamboyant American style and the quiet, disciplined reverence of Japanese culture was striking. Ali navigated this new environment with his characteristic charm, adapting to customs like bowing, observing the quiet respect that permeated interactions, and recognizing the intense focus on discipline that underpinned all Japanese sports. His days in Japan were a whirlwind. He trained rigorously, preparing for a unique challenge that lay ahead, a mixed martial arts fight against the legendary Antonio Inoki. Yet, amidst the grueling workouts, Ali found time for the public. He gave interviews, his quick wit and poetic pronouncements captivating the Japanese press. He met countless fans, signing autographs, posing for photographs, and always radiating that magnetic personality that had endeared him to millions across the globe. He was a celebrity in every sense of the word, but beneath the public persona, the dedicated athlete remained, focused on the task at hand. Central to the Japanese sporting landscape was sumo wrestling. It was more than just a sport. It was a spiritual discipline, a centuries-old tradition woven into the very fabric of the nation. Sumo wrestlers, known as rikishi, were revered figures, embodying strength, tradition, and a profound connection to Japan's cultural heritage. Koji Tanaka, the sumo who had just challenged Ali, was one such figure, though perhaps not at the very pinnacle of his sport. However, Ali's arrival wasn't universally celebrated. Some traditionalists within Japan viewed him as an outsider, a loud American whose brash confidence seemed to jar with their deeply ingrained sense of humility and respect. Whispers circulated, particularly within the sumo world, that a boxer, even one as renowned as Muhammad Ali, could not possibly comprehend, let alone contend with, the raw, unadulterated power of a sumo wrestler. These murmurs, these subtle undercurrents of skepticism and even disdain, formed the fertile ground in which Tanaka's arrogance began to take root and flourish. Tanaka, like many of his peers, saw Ali as an easy target for a challenge, a means to elevate his own status and gain international fame. He believed that Ali's boxing prowess, his speed and agility, would be utterly useless against the sheer mass and grounded power of a sumo. He envisioned a quick, decisive victory, a public humiliation of the foreign interloper that would solidify his own legend and defend the honor of sumo wrestling. The idea was not born of malice, but of a deeply ingrained belief in the superiority of his own discipline and a yearning for personal recognition on a global stage. The stage was set for a clash of cultures, disciplines, and egos, with Ali, ever the showman, ready to play his part. Koji Tanaka was not born with the inherent confidence that often accompanies true champions. His imposing physique was undeniable, a testament to years of rigorous training and a diet designed for sheer mass. But beneath the layers of muscle and tradition, there were cracks. He was a physically formidable sumo, yes, but he often lacked the nuanced discipline and strategic foresight that elevated good wrestlers to legendary status. His early career, while marked by moments of raw power and brute force, was also peppered with instances where he was outsmarted, outmaneuvered, or simply outthought by opponents who compensated for less bulk with superior technique and mental fortitude. These early humiliations, though rarely public in a grand sense, chipped away at his self-esteem, leaving a lingering resentment. He was often the nearly man, a contender who could dominate lesser opponents, but struggled to break into the truly elite ranks of sumo grand champions, the yokozuna. He had the strength, but perhaps not the heart, or more accurately, not the humility to learn from his shortcomings. Instead of introspection, Tanaka developed a defense mechanism: arrogance. He made grand pronouncements, audacious claims of his own invincibility, a tactic designed to mask his inner insecurities and project an image of unshakable dominance. There was a history of broken promises, not necessarily to others, but to himself. He'd often boast of crushing an opponent, only to find himself struggling, sometimes even losing, in the actual bout. He would dismiss these failures as flukes or unfair circumstances, never truly confronting his own limitations. He frequently disrespected smaller, faster opponents within sumo, viewing their agility as a weakness against his sheer weight. He saw their intricate footwork and precise throws as mere tricks, easily overcome by a direct, overwhelming charge. This narrow perspective extended beyond sumo. He utterly dismissed boxing as just hitting, failing to grasp the intricate footwork, the defensive weaving, the strategic feints, and the psychological warfare that defined the sweet science. To him, it was a primitive display, something easily overcome by a real man's strength. This cumulative emotional wear, this constant need to assert his superiority, fueled his ego into a monstrous entity. He felt he had to constantly prove himself, particularly against anyone he perceived as an outsider or a threat to his established worldview. The arrival of Muhammad Ali in Japan, a loud, charismatic American boxer who dared to challenge the established order, was the perfect catalyst for Tanaka's deeply ingrained need to assert dominance. Tanaka saw Ali not as a global icon of athletic prowess, but as a pretty boy boxer, an entertainer whose skills were superficial compared to the grounded spiritual power of sumo. With the world's eyes on Japan, drawn by Ali's presence and his upcoming fight against Inoki, Tanaka saw an unparalleled opportunity. Challenging Ali wasn't a sudden, impulsive act. It was the culmination of years of needing to assert his own legend, to finally prove to himself and to the world that he was truly superior. He believed Ali's famed speed was nothing more than a fleeting illusion, utterly meaningless against his raw, immovable power. He was convinced that a single, well-executed charge would be enough to expose Ali for the pretender he imagined him to be, solidifying Tanaka's own status as the true embodiment of strength and tradition. This was his moment, he believed, to finally achieve the recognition he felt he deserved, and to do so by humbling the world's most famous athlete. Muhammad Ali, always acutely aware of his public image, and the monumental task of maintaining his self-proclaimed title as the greatest, understood the weight of Tanaka's boastful pronouncements. News of the sumo's open challenge, delivered with such brazen disregard for Ali's stature, quickly reached him. Ali knew, with the certainty of a seasoned performer and a strategic warrior, that he could not simply ignore it. To do so would not only diminish his own standing, but also embolden others who might mistake his silence for weakness. Yet his response would not be what many expected. There would be no public retort, no counter-challenge thrown down in a fit of pique. Ali's internal process was far more nuanced, a silent ballet of calculation and foresight. He wouldn't openly brag or engage in a war of words with Tanaka. Instead, he absorbed the information, allowing it to percolate in his mind while maintaining an outward facade of serene confidence. Observers might have noticed him watching sumo matches with a new intensity, his gaze analytical, dissecting the movements, the balance, the raw power on display. He would ask his trainers, often in casual conversation, about the techniques, the vulnerabilities, the core philosophy of sumo. He wasn't just watching. He was studying, absorbing, processing, building a mental blueprint for the inevitable confrontation. Externally, Ali maintained his usual charismatic, playful demeanor. He continued to joke effortlessly with the press, his quick wit still sharp, his smile still infectious. He signed countless autographs, his presence a constant source of excitement for his Japanese fans. His training for the highly anticipated mixed martial arts bout against Antonio Inoki remained his absolute focus, a spectacle of dedication and discipline. No one, not the press, not his entourage, and certainly not Koji Tanaka, would suspect the subtle, yet devastating lesson Ali was meticulously planning. His actions were those of a man entirely focused on his primary objective. Yet beneath the surface, a secondary, more personal mission was quietly taking shape. This strategic calm stood in stark contrast to Tanaka's loud, impulsive challenges. Tanaka, fueled by a lifetime of perceived slights and a desperate need for validation, was a roaring fire, all smoke and fury. Ali, on the other hand, was a still, deep river, its currents powerful but hidden. Ali understood that true dominance wasn't merely about physical power or vocal aggression. It was about the mental game, about timing, and about creating an unassailable aura of superiority. He saw Tanaka's challenge not just as a personal affront, but as an opportunity to send a broader message, a warning to any other potential challengers who might underestimate his multifaceted capabilities. He wanted to demonstrate that even outside the boxing ring, even in an arena seemingly dominated by brute force, he was a force to be reckoned with. He wasn't going to engage in a sumo match, nor would he attempt to mimic their techniques. Instead, he would show Tanaka, and indeed the world, the unparalleled power of a boxer's agility, precision, and strategic intellect. He would prove that speed and intelligence could not only overcome, but utterly neutralize raw, unthinking power. This quiet resolve, this almost meditative preparation, was characteristic of Ali at his most dangerous. He wasn't just preparing for a fight, he was preparing to deliver a profound, unforgettable lesson, one that would resonate far beyond the confines of that Osaka dojo. His plan was not to defeat Tanaka in a conventional sense, but to dismantle his arrogance, piece by piece, using the very attributes Tanaka so foolishly dismissed. The air in the Osaka dojo crackled with an almost tangible tension, a silent countdown to an inevitable clash. Koji Tanaka, his face a mask of furious determination, stood poised, every muscle coiled for another assault. He had just bellowed his challenge, his voice echoing off the wooden beams, declaring Ali no match for him. The first charge had ended in a stumble, a momentary embarrassment, but now he was fueled by a desperate need to reclaim his pride. Ali, however, remained unperturbed. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips, a silent promise of what was to come. Tanaka, ignoring the whispers of the crowd and the frantic, hushed warnings from his own trainers, lunged forward for the second time. His massive frame moved with surprising speed, his arms outstretched, aiming to grab Ali, to envelop him in a crushing bear hug, to lift him off his feet and send him crashing to the mat. This was the sumo's ultimate move, a display of raw, unadulterated power designed to end any contest decisively. But Ali wasn't just anticipating, he was orchestrating. As Tanaka's hands reached for him, Ali didn't just sidestep. He performed a series of incredibly fast, almost dancing, footwork movements. It was a ballet of evasion, a masterclass in controlled chaos. He wasn't trying to hit Tanaka. He was making Tanaka look utterly foolish, a lumbering giant chasing a phantom. Ali moved like quicksilver, a blur of motion that defied the sumo's brute force. He weaved in and out, a human pendulum, always just beyond Tanaka's grasp. Each time Tanaka lunged, Ali was already gone, a puff of displaced air, the only evidence he had ever been there. The crowd, initially hushed in stunned silence, began to stir. Murmurs turned into gasps, then into a collective, disbelieving chuckle. It wasn't a mean-spirited sound, but one of pure astonishment and amusement at Tanaka's utter futility. The seconds stretched, each one feeling like an eternity to Tanaka, but a fleeting demonstration for Ali. 5 seconds elapsed, then 8, then 10. Tanaka's initial ferocity had given way to a desperate, flailing frustration. His face, once flushed with anger, was now turning a deep, angry shade of purple, sweat pouring down his brow as he chased empty air. His breathing became ragged, his movements less precise, more desperate. He spun, he lunged, he grunted with exertion, but Ali remained untouchable, a spectral presence that materialized and vanished with impossible grace. The sheer effort of pursuing Ali, who seemed to expend almost no energy at all, was rapidly draining the sumo's formidable reserves. Then, at precisely 11 seconds, the inevitable happened. Tanaka, utterly exhausted and thoroughly humiliated from chasing a target he could never quite reach, made one final, desperate lunge. Ali, with a final, almost imperceptible shift of weight, deftly stepped aside. The sumo wrestler, off balance and propelled by his own failed aggression, tripped over his own massive feet. He crashed to the dojo mat with a resounding thud, not from a punch, not from a throw, but from the sheer, overwhelming force of his own desperate, misguided momentum. The impact sent a tremor through the floorboards, but the sound was quickly swallowed by the collective gasp of the crowd. He lay there for a moment, disoriented and winded. His enormous body sprawled awkwardly. Slowly, painstakingly, Koji Tanaka pushed himself up, his eyes wide with a dawning, terrible realization. He looked up at Muhammad Ali, who was now standing perfectly still, not a bead of sweat on his brow, his breathing even and unhurried. A knowing smile, gentle yet utterly triumphant, played on Ali's face. It was a smile that spoke volumes, a silent declaration of victory born not of violence, but of intellect and unparalleled agility. Tanaka's anger, which had burned so fiercely moments before, was instantly extinguished, replaced by a profound, soul-crushing embarrassment. He had boasted, he had challenged, he had declared Ali no match for him, and in just 11 seconds, he had been utterly, spectacularly undone by his own hubris. He regretted his words, his arrogance, his entire ill-conceived challenge. Justice had been served, not with a knockout blow, but with a masterful, almost artistic display of agility and mental superiority. Ali had proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that speed and intelligence could not only stand against brute force, but could utterly dominate it. The lesson, delivered without a single punch thrown, was unforgettable. Koji Tanaka, though not physically hurt by his spectacular tumble, was deeply, irrevocably embarrassed. The incident, witnessed by a packed dojo and numerous members of the press, quickly became a cautionary tale whispered throughout the hallowed halls of the sumo world. It was a stark public lesson about humility, a vivid demonstration that even the most formidable physical presence could be rendered impotent by superior agility and intellect. For Tanaka, it was a turning point. The public humiliation, the sheer absurdity of his defeat, without a single blow landed, forced him to confront the hubris that had defined much of his career. He might not have become a grand champion, but he did, in the subsequent years, focus more intently on the spiritual discipline of sumo, on the quiet strength derived from internal balance rather than outward bluster. The incident, though painful at the time, ironically began his journey toward a more disciplined and less boastful approach to his art. For Muhammad Ali, this spontaneous display further cemented his already legendary status in Japan. Even those traditionalists who had initially viewed him with skepticism seeing him as a brash, loud American boxer, now regarded him with an entirely new level of respect. He was no longer just a fighter. He was a master of movement, a showman who could command a stage with or without gloves, and a true athlete whose understanding of strategy transcended the confines of any single sport. The Japanese media, captivated by his effortless grace and quick wit, hailed him as a phenomenon, a man whose charisma was as powerful as his punch. His ability to deliver such a profound lesson without resorting to violence resonated deeply within a culture that valued subtlety and indirect confrontation. He had not just defeated Tanaka. He had outsmarted him, outmaneuvered him, and ultimately enlightened him. The story of the 11-second non-fight isn't merely about a sumo wrestler getting his comeuppance, or a boxing legend asserting his dominance. It's a timeless narrative about the fundamental importance of respecting other disciplines, of understanding your opponent not just physically, but mentally. It's a powerful testament to the idea that strategic thinking, combined with unparalleled agility, can often triumph over raw, unthinking aggression. Ali didn't engage in a power struggle. He engaged in a struggle of wits and movement, and he won decisively. The lesson from that day in Osaka is clear and resonates far beyond the dojo. True strength isn't always about hitting the hardest, or being the biggest, or even shouting the loudest. Sometimes, true strength is found in moving the smartest, in finding the path of least resistance, and in using your opponent's own momentum against them. Dignity and respect are not earned through empty words or boastful challenges. They are earned through action, through disciplined effort, and through a profound understanding of oneself and one's capabilities. Ali, in those fleeting 11 seconds, embodied this truth. Muhammad Ali continued his storied career, facing legendary opponents and cementing his place as the greatest. Koji Tanaka, chastened but ultimately wiser, continued his career in sumo, forever marked by that memorable encounter. But that brief, almost ethereal 11-second exchange in Osaka remained a powerful, enduring reminder that sometimes the most profound and unforgettable lessons are taught without a single punch being thrown, without a single word of aggression, but with the elegant, almost poetic dance of superior intellect and movement. It was a moment that transcended sport, becoming a symbol of how grace, intelligence, and humility can ultimately prevail over brute force and arrogance.